My name is Andre, and to be honest, everything that happened to me is my own fault. That evening, I just wanted to shoot a video for the internet. The old psychiatric hospital had stood on the outskirts of the city since the Soviet era. People called it different names: the asylum, the meat processing plant, the burial ground, but most often, simply Object Number 17. Nobody went there. Even the homeless stayed far away from the place. They said that a light burned there at night, even though the electricity had been cut off 20 years ago. A few people had allegedly gone inside and were never seen again. Of course, I didn't believe it. I was 21 back then, a foolish age when you think you're immortal. I climbed over the rusty fence and instantly regretted it. The hospital building stood in the middle of the woods, looking dead. The windows were black, the walls were cracked. A faded red star on an old Soviet emblem still hung on the facade. The wind groaned through the broken window frames, and for some reason even then, I wanted to turn back.
But I went inside anyway. It smelled of dampness, dust, and something very old, as if things, or people, had been rotting here for decades. My flashlight swept across the walls. There were strange inscriptions everywhere. Don't sleep. He hears. Don't trust the nurse. Old patient restraint straps lay scattered on the floor. Rusty beds still stood in some of the wards. And the deeper I went, the stronger I felt a strange tension, as if someone was watching me. Somewhere upstairs, a metallic creaking echoed, slow, rhythmic, as if someone was rocking in an old chair. I went up to the second floor. It was much colder there. The corridor stretched into the darkness, and the doors to the wards were wide open. My flashlight suddenly began to flicker. Not now, I muttered. And right then, I heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, somewhere ahead. I froze. At the end of the corridor, something moved. A massive silhouette. I only managed to catch a glimpse of a white lab coat. And then I heard a woman's voice. A newborn. Everything inside me turned to ice. I turned and bolted back. The footsteps behind me grew faster. The floor literally shook from how heavily someone was running after me. I looked back for just a split second, and I saw her. A massive woman in an old medical coat was running after me, breathing heavily. Her fat arms flapped in all directions, and her face was so pale it looked as though she belonged in a grave long ago. I didn't know her name yet, but I will remember that look forever. She was smiling, as if she was glad I came. "Stop!" she screamed in a raspy voice. I reached the stairs, and at that exact moment, the floorboard cracked beneath my foot. I fell straight through. I only remember an agonizing pain. A strike to the head, a snap in my leg, and then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was already strapped to a bed. My body ached as if I'd been run over by a truck. An old lamp hung above me. It flickered with a yellow light. I tried to move. My arms were tied. My legs too. Awake, a coarse woman's voice called out. I turned my head and saw her. Huge, fat, almost as wide as two doorways. Her coat was covered in old, brownish stains, and keys hung around her neck dozens of keys. "Where am I?" I barely whispered. She smiled. "In the hospital, Andreyushenko." "I want to leave. And who's going to let you?" Everything inside me tightened. "Who are you?" "Nurse Katyushka." She picked up a metal bowl from the table. An awful stench hit me immediately. I looked inside, and I almost gagged. There was some kind of gray sludge, and a dead mouse was floating on top. "Eat," she said. "Are you insane? I'm not eating that." Her smile vanished instantly. "You will." She grabbed my jaw so hard that I screamed in pain. Then she shoved the spoon into my mouth. The taste was like chewing rotten meat. I began to vomit all over myself. Katyushka just laughed. "It's okay. You'll get used to it." And that was when I noticed something even more terrifying than her. Old medical instruments lay on the adjacent side table. Long metal spikes, a hammer, and a yellow document. Written on it in large letters was "Preparation for Lobotomy." And at the bottom, my name. When Katyushka left the ward, I lay motionless for a long time, staring at the yellowed piece of paper with my name on it. Preparation for lobotomy. I was shaking. I had only heard about this in old movies and creepy stories. A person's head was simply pierced with a special tool, and after that, they became a living doll. No emotions, no will, no self. And they were going to do this to me. I began to thrash around in the straps, but only ended up hurting myself. My wrists instantly started burning against the rough leather. Behind the door, the humming of old fluorescent lights could be heard. Somewhere far away, someone was screaming. Not briefly, not sharply, but long, exhausted, as if the person had been screaming for hours on end. Then, everything suddenly went dead silent. I froze. At that moment, it hit me for the first time that this place wasn't abandoned. They were still treating people here. I looked at the window. It was fitted with old Soviet bars. The walls were cracked and black mold was growing in the corners. And then I heard a faint whisper. "Andrey." I snapped my head around. A man was sitting in the dark corner of the ward. I hadn't even noticed him before. Skinny, overgrown, in dirty hospital clothes. One of his eyes looked crookedly to the side. "Who are you?" I whispered. He slowly raised a finger to his lips. "Quiet, she'll hear." "How did you end up here?" "Like everyone else." He stood up from the floor and came closer. "I'm Maxim. Are you a patient too?" He nodded. "Going on 3 months now." Everything inside me turned to ice. "Why haven't you escaped?" Maxim laughed nervously. "You think I haven't tried?" He leaned in closer. He reeked of blood and medicine. "This isn't a hospital, Andrey. It's a slaughterhouse." I remained silent. They pump people full of some kind of garbage. Then they perform the procedures. And those who survive, they keep them here. Is the lobotomy real? Maxim nodded slowly. Every morning, they take someone away. I'm Maxim. Are you a patient too? He nodded. Going on 3 months now. Everything inside me turned to ice. Why haven't you escaped? Maxim laughed nervously. You think I haven't tried? He leaned in closer. He reeked of blood and medicine. This isn't a hospital, Andre. It's a slaughterhouse. I remained silent. They pump people full of some kind of garbage. Then they perform the procedures, and those who survive, they keep them here. Is the lobotomy real? Maxim nodded slowly. Every morning, they take someone away. Slow, dragging, as if someone massive was walking straight toward our ward. Maxim instantly went pale. She's coming. He began cutting the strap faster. My hand was almost free. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Silence fell. Then, the doorknob slowly began to turn down. "Pretend," Maxim whispered. I immediately lay back and closed my eyes. The door opened with a creak. I heard Katyushka's heavy breathing. She stepped inside. The floorboards literally groaned under her weight. For a few seconds, there was absolute silence. Then, I smelled her stench right next to me. Rotten food, sweat, and something metallic. Blood. "Andreyushenka," she said softly. I could barely control my breathing. Her cold fingers touched my face. "Tomorrow you'll become a good boy." I heard her strange chuckle. And then, her hand suddenly stopped on the strap. The very same one. The notched one. My heart dropped into my stomach. Katyushka slowly turned her head. I could feel it, even with my eyes closed. She was looking at Maxim. "Are you helping the new guys again?" Maxim said nothing. And in the next second, Katyushka grabbed him by the neck and slammed him against the wall. All her might. Blood splattered onto the tiles. "I told you not to interfere!" she shrieked. Maxim collapsed to the floor. But suddenly, he screamed at me. "Andrei, run!" I yanked at the straps. One snapped, then the second one. Katyushka spun around to face me, her small eyes filled with fury. "Stop!" I leaped off the bed and immediately fell from the pain in my leg. After the fall, it still wasn't working properly, but fear was stronger. I burst out into the corridor and froze. Patients were standing there, dozens of them, skinny, pale. Some had their heads bandaged, some were missing parts of their skull, and all of them were silently staring at me, as if they were waiting for something. And somewhere behind me, Katyushka's mad scream was already echoing. "Come back here, Andryusha!" I ran, or rather, I tried to run. After the fall, my right leg hurt as if there was broken glass stuck inside it. Every step sent a jolt through my entire body. But Katyushka's heavy footsteps were already echoing behind me. The corridor seemed endless. Old lights flickered overhead, and the patients slowly stepped aside to let me pass. They didn't say a single word. They just watched with empty eyes. And that was more terrifying than the screaming. "In here," I heard a whisper. Maxim was standing by an open door at the end of the hallway. His lip was busted and blood was trickling down his neck. I quickly ducked inside. He immediately shut the door and barricaded it with an old wardrobe. "She's gonna find us any second," I whispered. "Not right away," Maxim replied, breathing heavily. "Katyushka is stupid, but stubborn." We'd ended up in an old procedure room. Everything was covered in dust. Rusty tools lay on the tables. Old syringes, saws, straps. And in the center, stood a strange chair with metal head restraints. I understood what it was immediately. Oh, God. Maxim silently walked over to a cabinet and pulled out a few yellowed folders. "They still perform lobotomies here," he said quietly, "using the old Soviet methods." I looked at the papers. The photographs showed people after the procedures. Blank stares.
Open mouths. Some had bandages sticking out of their heads. In one photo, I suddenly saw an old man in a doctor's coat. "Who's this?" "The chief doctor," Maxim replied. Under the photograph was a date, 1983. But he should have died a long time ago. Maxim gave me a strange look. Nobody dies normally here. Suddenly, heavy wheezing came from behind the door. Katushka. She was standing right on the other side of the door and laughing softly. "Andreyushenka, you've disappointed me." I heard her start scratching the door with something metallic.
Open mouths. Some had bandages sticking out of their heads. In one photo, I suddenly saw an old man in a doctor's coat. "Who's this?" "The chief doctor," Maxim replied. Under the photograph was a date, 1983. But he should have died a long time ago. Maxim gave me a strange look. Nobody dies normally here. Suddenly, heavy wheezing came from behind the door. Katyushka. She was standing right on the other side of the door and laughing softly. "Andreyushenka, you've disappointed me." I heard her start scratching the door with something metallic.
But the door was already beginning to give way, and I heard Katyushka shriek, "I'll find you anyway!" We climbed down. The ladder creaked under our feet. The basement was almost pitch black. Only a single red bulb flickered somewhere far in the distance. Maxime closed the hatch above us, and for a few seconds, silence fell. I was breathing heavily. What is this place? The old lobotomy block. Have you been here before? Maxime nodded. Once. And what's down there? He was silent for a long time. I saw faceless people. My mouth went dry. We walked forward down a narrow corridor. The walls here were different. Not peeling wallpaper, but metal plates. Old Soviet posters hung on them. The mentally ill are not human. Lobotomy, the path to peace. I started to feel sick. Suddenly, a sound echoed ahead of us, as if someone had stepped on metal. We froze. "Someone's here," I whispered. Maxime abruptly switched off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed us completely. I could hear nothing but our own breathing. And then, a shuffling sound. Slow, uneven. Someone was walking down the corridor, getting closer. My heart was thumping so hard I thought we'd be heard. And suddenly, a face appeared in the dark. Pale, mutilated. The man was missing part of his skull. Instead of one eye, a black hole. He was staring straight at me and smiling. "Newbies," he rasped. I leaped backward and accidentally slammed my head into a metal cart. Then I slipped on something wet and flew face first into a sharp metal edge with all my might. Right in the eye. The world seemed to explode. I screamed.
The pain was so excruciating it made me nauseous. I collapsed to the floor, clutching my face. Blood immediately started pouring through my fingers.
Andrei, Maxim knelt beside me. I could barely open my other eye. I could see almost nothing with my right one. Everything was flooded with red. My eye! My eye! Quiet! Get up! I can't. Maxim forced me to my feet. I almost blacked out from the pain. The right side of my face felt like it was being ripped apart with a knife. Hang on! If we stop, we're dead! And right at that moment, the sound of the hatch opening echoed from above, followed by Katyushka's voice. Andreyusha, I'm already close. Katyushka's voice echoed throughout the entire basement. Andreyusha, I'm already close. My legs literally gave out beneath me. Maxim suddenly grabbed my arm. Don't just stand there! She knows this whole place! We bolted forward down the dark corridor. I could barely stay on my feet. My head was spinning, and my bandaged eye pulsed with pain. With each passing minute, my vision was getting worse, even in my good eye. That mutilated patient suddenly began to laugh. Quietly. Raspy. She loves the newbies. Maxim shoved him aside, and we ran on. The basement was getting stranger and stranger. The walls here were lined with old white tiles, but almost all of them had turned black with time. Dark stains that looked like dried blood were visible on the floor. The doors on both sides of the corridor were made of metal. Each had a plaque on it. Sector A. Isolation. Post-procedure. I was shaking. How many people are here? I whispered. There used to be a lot. Now I don't know. Who are they? The ones who were brought down here. Suddenly, a woman's crying echoed somewhere ahead. Quiet. Very faint. I automatically slowed down. Someone's there. Maxim instantly grabbed me by the jacket. Don't go toward the sounds. But it's a trap. In that exact second, the crying sharply turned into laughter. Maniacal. Each had a plaque on it. Sector A. Isolation. Post-procedure. I was shaking. How many people are here? I whispered. There used to be a lot. Now I don't know. Who are they? The ones who were brought down here. Suddenly, a woman's crying echoed somewhere ahead. Quiet. Very faint. I automatically slowed down. Someone's there. Maxim instantly grabbed me by the jacket. Don't go toward the sounds. But it's a trap. In that exact second, the crying sharply turned into laughter. Maniacal. Eyes. Dozens of eyes. I almost threw up. Oh, God. Maxim quickly began rummaging through the cabinets. Where is it? Where is it? What are you looking for? Rubbing alcohol, bandages, something. I sat down by the wall, pressing my hand against my eye. Blood dripped onto the floor. My head was buzzing. Maxim finally found a dirty bandage. This is going to hurt. Just do it. He began wrapping the bandage around my head. I bit down on my sleeve to keep from screaming. The pain was as if a shard of metal was still stuck inside my eye socket. Can you see? Maxim asked. With the left eye, yes. And the right one? I slowly moved my hand away and realized that with my right eye, I could only see blurry shadows.
panic started to set in. No, 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 no! Quiet, you're still alive. I'm going blind! Andrei! He grabbed me by the shoulders. Listen to me carefully. If we get out of here, you'll get help. But right now, the main thing is to survive. I was breathing heavily. Suddenly, total silence fell behind the door.
Complete. Absolute. Maxim went pale. Why is she quiet? And at that exact second, the screech of metal echoed above us. We slowly raised our heads. The ceiling. The ventilation shaft. A large vent grate began to slowly bend downward. And then, we heard Katushka's voice, right above us. I found you. The door began to be violently battered, and dust showered down from the ceiling. Open up, Katushka rasped from behind the door. Treatment time. I backed away, clutching the blood-soaked bandage over my eye. Maxim was frantically rummaging through the archival cabinets. Where is it? Where is it? What are you looking for? The building blueprint! Katushka began throwing her entire weight against the door to break it down. The wood splintered louder and louder. I could already hear her heavy breathing right outside. Maxim finally pulled out an old, yellowed sheet of paper. Got it! He unfolded the hospital diagram right on the floor. There used to be a service tunnel for the staff here. They used it to carry out the bodies. And where is it? Maxim pointed to the wall behind the cabinets. There. We immediately began pushing the heavy metal shelves aside. I had almost no strength left. I could see next to nothing with my right eye now, only a blurry light. Katushka slammed into the door even harder, and it began to cave in. Finally, the door shattered into pieces. Katushka barged inside. Her gown was torn, and her fat face was contorted with rage. Stop running! I had never seen a person move so fast given such weight. She lunged straight at us. Maxim violently shoved me aside. Katushka crashed into the cabinet, sending folders flying all over the room. Open the passageway! Maxim screamed. I started pulling at the last shelf. My hands were slipping from the blood. Behind me, the terrifying sounds of a struggle echoed. Katushka had grabbed Maxim by the throat and lifted him off the floor. Don't touch him! I screamed. Maxim was suffocating, but he still tried to break free. Andrei, the passageway! With the last of my strength, I threw my weight against the cabinet, and it fell. Behind it, a narrow, dark tunnel was revealed. Cold air hit my face. The exit. Maxim! I rushed toward him. But right then, someone else entered the archive room. An old man in a blood-stained Soviet doctor's coat. Bald, skinny, with a strange smile. In his hand, he held a long metal tool for lobotomies. The chief doctor. The very same one from the 1983 photograph. He was alive. The patient must not leave the hospital, he said calmly. The blood ran cold in my veins. Maxim suddenly screamed, Andrei, run! With all his might, he kicked Katushka hard in the stomach. She lost her balance for a second. That was enough. Maxim shoved me straight into the tunnel. No, I'm not leaving you! Listen to me, he shouted. I looked at him, completely beaten up, covered in blood,
barely alive. But he was smiling. "You're getting out of here. Do you hear me? At least one of us has to."
Maxim. Behind him, Katyushka was already rising. The doctor was slowly approaching with the tool in his hand. Maxim looked me straight in the eyes. "Don't let this place break you." Then he violently grabbed a metal cabinet and tipped it over, blocking the passageway completely. A mountain of metal crashed down between us. I heard Katyushka's terrifying shriek. Then the sounds of a struggle. Maxim was shouting something. And then everything suddenly went dead silent. Panic seized me. "Maxim!" In response, nothing. Only the distant voice of the doctor. "The second patient is dead." I stood in the dark tunnel, unable to believe what had just happened. I wanted to turn back, to help, but I could hear them already clearing the debris. And so, I ran. The tunnel was long, endless. I fell. I slammed against the walls. I could see almost nothing. Blood dripped from my eye onto the concrete. And somewhere far behind, Katyushka's voice echoed. "Andriusha!" A few minutes later, light appeared ahead. I crawled out, right into the woods. Night. Rain. Cold. I collapsed into the mud and began to cough. The hospital stood behind me among the trees. Dark. Dead. But in the windows of the top floor, a light was burning. I saw Katyushka's silhouette. She was standing by the window, staring straight at me. Even from that distance, even with only one eye, I could feel it. And then the doctor's silhouette appeared beside her. He slowly waved his hand at me. I turned around and ran into the woods. I never went back there. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up to a strange sound, as if someone heavy is walking outside my door, and a faint whisper. "Andriushenka, we didn't finish curing you."